Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel on How to Pastor. In this series, we've been taking a look at how to conduct a funeral. And in today's video, I want to talk about the graveside service. Now, there's a handful of things that might help you out in conducting the graveside service. First of all, I always attempt to get there a little bit early and just check out the lay of the land. Each grave site is a little bit different in where the company may place the casket, where they may have the chairs or a tent may be set out there, and I just like to see what I'm dealing with and if it's laid out in a way that's conducive to communicating with everyone. One of the first things I do also as guests arrive is I attempt to gather people as closely as possible. There's usually a handful of chairs in the front for the family, and then the tent kind of inadvertently sets a perimeter, and most people stand outside the area of the tent. I always call them in underneath and try to gather people in as close as possible. Also, something very important is before the graveside service, earlier in the week when you meet with the family, kind of set some expectations and see what their desire is for that service. Often it's a limited guest count. Sometimes they'll want to throw flowers on the casket afterwards. Some families want to watch the casket lower. I've even been at a ceremony where guests were invited up to sign the casket. So it just attempt to figure out what the family would like. A third thing that's vitally important is keep the service short. You've already been through a funeral service and a receiving line, and by this time of the day, the family is incredibly tired. I would keep the graveside service as short as possible. On top of that, usually the audio is not very good. There's no microphone out there. It's going to be difficult for people to hear you. Unless you live in beautiful Southern California or something like that, you're going to have a challenge with the weather. It's either going to be too cold or steaming hot in the middle of summer, and just keeping the service incredibly short just helps the guests and everyone to stay connected the entire time. Finally, the words that I say there also. Often I will just go online and find a committal liturgy from another tradition that talks about lines like dust to dust and ashes to ashes. Usually there's a handful of very poignant lines that are used traditionally that you can state. Also, I often will take the 23rd Psalm and read through it very slowly, and even ask people to reflect on each line and see where it is that they might need God to minister to them. I often have a very short prayer at the end, committing the person's soul or committing their spirit into the hands of God. And then a final thing is it's also very important to ensure that you clearly close out the time. After it's done, the family never knows what to do. Guests don't know what to do, so I always give instructions at the very end. After I do a final closing prayer and say amen, often I'll instruct people to come on up and pay their final respects to the deceased, or to come forward and to pay their final condolences to the family, and then feel free to go on home or head to a luncheon or whatever there may be next for that family. So there you go. It's not a major service, but it's definitely very important to the family, and it's good to know a couple of items to work through with the family and a couple of tips that will hopefully make your graveside service go a little bit easier.